35 years ago, Dalu was a poor man. After a long time being lost in a desert, he was endowed with a treasure. He figured out he had a daughter after getting rich. And he began to search for his lost daughter. Dalu's daughter had been through so many hardships. Her husband's family despised an orphan like her. Dalu was a famous rich man in Saudi Arabia. The government even built a road only for him. However, the king put him under supervision all the time. Actually, the king wanted to marry the princess to well-mannered Dalu. A while ago, Dalu found out that he had a daughter, so that he frankly refused a marriage with the princess. He dared to refuse such a chance for life. All hell broke loose when he refused the king. The king didn't give it up easily. If Dalu didn't change his mind, the king would confiscate his property. Honestly, Dalu loved it, but what he could do when he suddenly had a daughter? He took a flight to South Korea to find his lost daughter. Dalu, a middle-aged man who looked so elegant in a suit, bewitched many women. Even this flight attendant wasn't an exception. Abdullah promptly stopped her from sitting in Dalu's lap. He found out that Dalu's daughter already married Horim, who was working for a bank. He was a cowardly, independent man from a badly off family. That was why he always admired other people's life, and he tired of his untidy wife. He was about to have an affair. Despite that, his wife served his family with utter dedication. No matter how dedicated she was, her family didn't recognize her. She looked so cheap in their eyes. This was their first trip abroad after 15 years of marriage. Ji-young indeed was so unlucky. The flight was cancelled due to the bad weather. Horim was happy with that, whereas Ji-young grew cross. She wasn't happy at all because it was the first time he traveled by plane. Why was she so unlucky? To stop her from making noise, the tour guide said, "Lower your voice, old woman." She couldn't do anything though. Finally, she grabbed his hair and demanded a refund. Horim stayed away as he felt ashamed. His mistress said she just returned to the country and was still at the airport. Being in a sweat, Horim hung up the phone right away. When Ji-young ran towards him after getting it done, he made an excuse to leave. He found a corner to call his mistress. As she had a free time, she wanted to enjoy life together with Horim. Horim got extremely excited and lost his patience. Dalu said they were the same. They looked at each other for a while. They seemed to understand each other. Indeed, men make men happy. Ji-young passed by Dalu, who was her father. During dinner, Dalu saw a little girl dancing. He remembered his daughter when she was small. Dalu greeted the little girl and asked her for a dance. Ji-young came home with disappointment when her trip was cancelled. Her mother-in-law welcomed her with disparagement. Her incompetent and useless husband even left her. Abdullah was under order to meet up with a detective who had information on Dalu's daughter. He was told that the husband of Dalu's daughter was having an affair. The detective backed up all information related to his mistress in an USB. Abdullah didn't care. He was only completing his mission. Horim's mistress and his wife had the same name. Horim dined out with his mistress in a fancy restaurant. Dalu recognized his daughter. He wondered why his daughter was living a tough life. Was it life that made her look so bad? Their home meals were frugal. Ji-young felt joyful for days when she could eat beef. Meanwhile, her husband was dining out with his mistress in a fancy restaurant. They fed each other with expensive beefsteak. Knowing nothing about his affair, Ji-young still waited for him at home. After dinner, Horim took his mistress to a shopping mall, where displayed high-end perfumes, dresses, and watches. Ji-young, Horim's mistress, visited a store of high-end cosmetic brand. She grabbed a costly jar of facial cream. Horim took one more, which made her unhappy. While Ji-young still waited for him until midnight. Next morning, Dalu came to see Horim at his company. Horim was so confused when Dalu introduced himself as his father-in-law. Dalu frankly said that he was the father whom Ji-young had never seen before, because he run a business of oil exploitation in Saudi Arabia for all those years. To make sure his daughter wouldn't hate him, Dalku asked Horim to praise him in front of Ji-young. Horim felt elated at Dalku's invitation to Saudi Arabia. Right after that, Horim sounded disappointed, as the one Dalku mentioned was the leader of TV series producers, whose task was to find excellent script writers. That sounded very unfamiliar. The mentioned one wasn't his wife. That was his mistress, Ji-young B. His wife was thought to be his mistress. Horim was about to ask for a lenience with a confession, but he didn't want to miss the mine of gold. Finally, he chose silence. Dalku invested $1.2 million in the bank, in the name of Horim, which made Horim become famous all around the company. Even the director of the bank also buttered up Horim. When Horim told Dalku about his family situation, Horim talked about his caustic mother as a good and decent woman. In fact, she was a gambler. Ji-young had to cook after coming home from work. Her daughter was too hungry to have instant noodles. Her sister-in-law lived in the below floor, who usually took Ji-young's things without asking for permission. Ji-young was living with her husband's family. Dalku knew how tough it was for her. Money can buy everything. Dalku took Horim to luxury stores to buy clothes for his daughter. A dress there charged millions of won. Horim gaped at the price, even though Dalku could afford them all. This was what Horim wanted for life. Dalku told Horim to get used to a noble life. Then he gave Horim a makeover. After a while of fitting, Horim chose a suit. Detective Han was spying on them. He wondered why Dalku was so good with the guy who cheated on his daughter. Dalku was willing to buy Horim 2 cars, a luxury and a sport one. It was so easy for Horim to get what many people wished for. As for Dalku, money couldn't make it up for his lost daughter all those years. Horim showed his true colors. Money is omnipotent for him. A famous and high-ranking father was finding for his lost daughter. What a great god of fortune. Dalku liked what he said. Abdullah suddenly remembered that Horim was having an affair. He had another woman. Horim couldn't stop smiling. He was confident when Dalku asked for a chance to meet his daughter. His life changed from then on. Horim's phone rang, breaking the happy atmosphere. Ji-young's call made him sweat. Dalku told Horim to pick up the phone. Coming home, Horim asked Ji-young if her father was still alive. Ji-young wondered what was wrong with him, but he didn't give up. He wondered if Dalku was really his father-in-law. Jae-young thought his mother spoke scornfully of an orphan like her. They didn't get what the other was meaning. Horim complained with a loud voice about how hard he worked every day. He even blamed Ji-young for that. Taking time at late night, Ji-young did her favorite thing, writing. But her husband's words distracted her. She felt better when admired her daughter. The next day, Horim wanted to tell Ji-young B about Dalku, but he didn't know how to say it. Ji-young B thought he wished to break up. She was okay as they had enough fun together. Then she turned away without a look back. Horim ran after him and said her father mistook him as her husband, and her father was waiting for her at a restaurant. Ji-young B emphasized that she didn't know who her father was. Horim said her father was looking for her. Ji-young B thought he was kidding, that her rich father mistook them as a married couple. Ji-young B didn't know what to do when he talked about the DNA test. Horim didn't want Dalku knew he had a wife. They both were put in a sudden trouble. After many years of suffering, Ji-young let her hair down at a club. Horim was amazed with her change. It was the first time she acted that way. Who says women can't hang out at a nightclub? Ji-young got in Dalku's car in a drunken stupor. Abdullah recognized her at first glance but did not speak. Seeing Horim, he closed the door to cover her. On the way home, Dalku was startled by a drunken woman. Her unkempt hair and indecent posture made his gorge rise. Dalku didn't get it when Abdullah said she wasn't suitable. He was speechless by Abdullah's answer. But Abdullah blamed Dalku for letting her in the car. He reminded Dalku of being a gentleman who shouldn't be noisy. Dalku wanted to get her out of the car, however, Abdullah seemed different. He determined to take her to the police station. In the end, Dalku let Abdullah did what he wanted. Drunken Ji-young thought Abdullah was a bad guy, so she tried hard to run away. Mistaking a tree trunk with a man's thigh, she hugged it tight and said, "I'm married." Dalku said she was hugging a tree trunk. Somehow, Dalku helped her stand up. Unexpectedly, Ji-young used her head to knock Dalku on his head. As soon as her sister-in-law said she had an appetite for dumplings, her mother-in-law ordered her to cook it. Ji-young couldn't do anything but to endure it. Her mother-in-law didn't let her own daughter do anything but command Ji-young. She kept disparaging Ji-young without giving her any help. She fell asleep while Ji-young made dumplings for her daughter. Ji-young brought dumplings to her sister-in-law and got back leftover kimchi. She even told Ji-young to make another kind of kimchi next time. Ji-young had to suppress her anger. Meantime, Ji-young brought along a bouquet to see her rich father. She was shy and kind of sad when seeing him for the first time. She didn't know who her father was, so she thought Dalku was really her father. Waiting for this moment for a long time, she called him Dad. Dalku wasn't used to it yet. The atmosphere was almost broken when he mentioned Horim. When Dalku gave her a photo, she realized that wasn't her mother. The woman Dalku knew had nothing to do with her mother. Ji-young was scared. Dalku wondered how her mother described him. She also wanted to know, however, her crazy mother didn't tell her much. Ji-young replied, "She said you were tall and rich." Rich? Her own words exposed her, because Dalku was a very poor man. Ji-young's mother was his first love. Returning home, Ji-young searched for the photos taken when she was small. The truth was that she wasn't his daughter, which made her down in the dump. Her dream didn't come true. Only the truth remained. Detective Han didn't get what was going on. Why did the woman having an affair with husband of Dalku's daughter get a luxury car? Turns out the information was disordered. It was his assistant, Miwa, who made a wrong input. Addressing her fault, she knelt down begging for forgiveness. Arising suspicion, Dalku decided to investigate the orphanage where Ji-young lived. Ji-young received a call from the one who caused this whole problem. Of course, there is no free lunch in life. Miwa was the top spy hacker in Saudi Arabia, who disguised herself as an assistant. She wanted to work with Ji-young to earn more money. They had a very high opinion of themselves and underestimated Dalku. He was like a soldier who found an oil field in the middle of vast desert. Even the International Intelligence Network considered him a holy existence. He was a fool. In the early 80s, there was a case among North Korean workers that shocked the world. Dalku was the only one who could escape from the robbers. Currently, the king of Saudi Arabia held this courageous man in high esteem. That was how Dalku was granted with title and property. The king tried many ways to keep Dalku stay. Yet, Dalku had something half done. Dalku let Horim and the fake daughter acted in front of him. That was for finding the betrayal. Ji-young thought her plan was going on well. Someone appeared to take her life. Dalku came in time and saved her life. Actually, he wanted to protect his own daughter, because the statesmen of Saudi Arabia kept their eyes on his asset for a long time. Getting prepared for all contingencies, Ji-young seduced Horim. She asked him to stay with her overnight. In another place, Ji-young was enjoying chicken feet and beer. Abdullah kept her safe from afar. He seemed to have feelings for this silly princess. Amid her refreshment, Ji-young remembered leaving her wallet home. Abdullah came and ordered noodles in order to help Ji-young. Ji-young wanted to borrow his money but daren't speak up yet. Abdullah created a chance for her to do something for him, and he gave her money as a tip. Ji-young thanked him for that. Horim took his sick daughter as an excuse to refuse Ji-young. He became completely confused. Ji-young realized that Abdullah still followed after her. No matter how cleverly she refused, he pretended not to understand. She told him, "I'm married." Yet, he still followed her. Until when he saw Horim, he said goodbye and left. Ji-young asked Horim out the following day. She waited for him on the way to his home. Seeing Ji-young was coming near, she ran towards Horim and kissed him. Horim had no intention to marry her. He never thought of abandoning his family. Ji-young told Ji-young that he would divorce her. Horim denied that. Horim told Abdullah the truth that he and Ji-young weren't a married couple. He begged Ji-young to forgive him. It was for improving his career. Ji-young didn't buy into him. She tried to keep calm at home. It was the first time Horim heard her crying in pain. He couldn't do anything but blame himself. Ji-young thought of the time of Ji-young's appearance and Dalku's rival. Horim's wife also named Ji-young. Something uneasy appeared in her head. Subsequently, she called Miwa. She made a right guess that Horim was really Dalku's son-in-law. She couldn't accept the truth that she wasn't his daughter. At the same time, Dalku flatly asked Abdullah, "Are you my enemy?" Abdullah replied, "You're a friend of my dad and I admire you. I'll give you, my friend's son, a last chance to tell the truth." Next morning, Ji-young calmly talked to Horim. "If she is your true love, I agree with a divorce." Horim denied his relation with Ji-young. And she changed her way. As long as he told her the truth, she would forgive him. Horim agreed to tell her on one condition, that she wouldn't make a fuss. Still, Ji-young lost control when he admitted his affair. Horim had no excuse to talk back. Ji-young kept running after him to release her anger. Dalku came to see the detective in order to find the true intruder. The detective gave him a document from NIS. He clearly revealed his true identity and mentioned Dalku's North Korean name. NIS promised to help him deal with Saudi Arabia. Dalku saw his whole information on the confidential document. It was attached with DNA test result and photo of his daughter. It was shocking that the drunken woman was his daughter. Ji-young put on makeup and got ready for fight. A middle-aged woman who was stuck in a marriage. Couldn't compare to a successful woman. Holding her hands tight, she came to Ji-young's office. Ji-young remained calm seeing her. Ji-young's confidence defeated Ji-young's anger. The angrier one was the one who was deeper in pain. Ji-young still smiled after Ji-young walked out of there. Couldn't stay calm, Ji-young leaned on a railing. Ji-young called Horim again. Returned to and returns to the employees she used to live with. As soon as getting off the bus, her heels broke. Seeing Ji-young at a cafe, Horim seemed so nervous while she was so calm. He did have feelings for her but never thought of divorcing his wife. Instead of saying that he didn't want to hurt his wife, well, after days of living together, he realized that they had nothing in common. He felt so sorry for his wife and about to tell Dalku the truth. She didn't oppose it, because he was none other than a pawn for her. Visiting the orphanage, Dalku was told that his daughter had been waiting for him. The other kids accepted that they were orphans. Only Ji-young believed that his father would find her one day. So she waited for him on a stump for 10 years. Dalku felt so sorry for her. Before the orphan keeper finished, they heard someone cursing. It was Ji-young who was cursing at a tree. Dalku wondered what was going on. The keeper said Ji-young was good at fighting and cursing. After releasing her anger, Ji-young sat on a stump out of habit. It was still hard for Dalku to. He approached behind her and took a strand of her hair. He wanted to verify it by himself. Noticing Ji-young's heels, he kidded her, "You came here in a broken heel?" Ji-young hit her heels. She had no idea that the one whom she had been waiting for was right next to her. Dalku's encouragement touched Ji-young. Life is full of ups and downs, twists and turns. Everyone experiences it. She wiped her tears. Dalu asked her to go with him, but she refused. Before leaving, he gave her his shoes and walked barefoot. He even emphasized, "I don't have athlete's foot." Horim came to the orphanage for Ji-young. He wondered why she was wearing man's shoes. He just sat next to her without asking about that. Ji-young carried out her next action. She admitted that she wasn't his daughter. Dalu said nothing, so she continued asking a few probing questions. She agreed it was the best way to break off unnecessary relationships. His action made her think it was a good thing. Checking on the DNA test result, Ji-young was really his daughter. He got furious when being fooled by Horim for days. He went straight to Horim's workplace, scared him to death. "Nice to meet you, son-in-law." Dalu got him by the tie and dragged him out. Horim played a trick to get away, but he couldn't escape. Horim was pushed in the car and he didn't get what was going on. Dalu got Horim scared out of his wits. "Only one of us stays alive today, you jerk." Horim was too scared to let go of the belt. Also, he kept saying sorry for lying to Dalu. "You're really my son-in-law." Dalu exploded with rage and called Horim a jerk. Horim kept saying sorry for acting as his son-in-law to gain achievements at work. Dalu didn't get mad about that. He told Horim, "Your wife is my daughter." Horim still said sorry. Ji-young resigned herself to her fate. Her mother-in-law asked Ji-young to grill meat. Ji-young told her mother-in-law that her friend's husband was having an affair. The man's mother clearly knew that, but she still ordered her daughter-in-law to do chores and grill meat. Ji-young's mother-in-law mentioned two of her friends. Ji-young, that man named Morim. Her mother-in-law was like, "What a strange name." Ji-young seemed to turn into another person after getting hurt. The mother-in-law felt insecure with her story. She became vexed when Ji-young talked about the penalty of having an affair. Ji-young received a call from the hospital. She ran out without shoes. She recalled the call from the hospital when she was small. It was a pain that she could never forget, because her mother left the world after the call. The little could only pray for God's mercy. In such a similar situation, she put her hands together. She prayed for her husband's safety. As soon as Horim opened his eyes, he saw Dalu. "I can't stand it when you're still breathing." Ji-young saw Dalu hitting her husband with a cushion. She thought Dalu was bullying Horim. Horim was like, "Why do you take so long to get here?" "I'm so scared." Ji-young didn't understand what was going on. She just saw how angry Dalu was. Horim wanted to tell her that he was her father. Ji-young wondered if Dalu was insane. Dalu didn't let go of Horim's neck. Abdullah kept Ji-young back from interfering Dalu and Horim. It wasn't the right time for Dalu to let her know, so he commanded Horim to keep it from her. Ji-young believed that Dalu caused the accident. To collect evidence for the later, she asked for Dalu's number. After the procedures were completed, Ji-young immediately took Horim home. Dalu was extremely pleased with her because he originally thought she was a fool. She was quite smart though. Walking after Ji-young, Horim felt happy because she was really Dalu's daughter. He got a tremble when realizing Dalu and Ji-young were the same. After returning home, Horim began trying to get Ji-young's sentiment of pity. He lay on the yard and faced his room. The scene of Ji-young cleaning the home rose up before him. He imagined a good life with his wife and daughter, then fell asleep. Early in the morning, his mom kept scolding Ji-young for letting him sleep outside after a car accident. Ji-young's response shut his mom's up. Horim was deemed to help them make peace, but his mom defended him. Ji-young responded, "Your son will stay at your house from now on." Ji-young didn't want to talk anymore and she went straight to her room. Afterwards, Horim and his mom had words with each other. His mom felt ashamed while he admitted it was his plan. Ji-young heard her daughters laugh outside. The good father-daughter relationship encouraged her to compromise. It is tough to make such a choice for women who have unhappy marriage. There was no way to keep herself from being hurt. Abdullah came to Ji-young's house to take back Dalku's shoes. He wanted Ji-young to come to his shop and say thank you in person. She was like Cinderella who first visited the palace. The table was full of delicious food for her. She came there to pay back Dalku his shoes and hospital fee. However, Dalku analyzed her facial features. You don't look like an old woman. Your face and nose look quite good. Dalku praised the best features in her face. Ji-young thought he was trying to cover his daughter's fault. Do you want me to turn a blind eye at your daughter's affair with my husband? Dalku replied, I'm not that kind of person. They couldn't come to the agreement. Taking this chance, Dalku asked if Ji-young was airsick. Ji-young had never traveled by plane. Dalku wondered if she had a passport. But Ji-young thought he was looking down on her. The more Dalku tried to explain, the more she got it wrong. He kept raising his finger, which made Ji-young out of sorts, and she grabbed his fingers. The little Ji-young saw her friend's parents picking them up. She covered her head with her backpack in the rain. She was used to it. It recurred again 30 years later. Being hesitant for a while, she ran in the rain, covering her head with her bag. One thing different, Dalku appeared with an umbrella. Her fate changed step by step. She didn't know he was her father whom she was waiting for the last 35 years. Dalku planned to throw a big party for her. Horim told his daughter to insist Ji-young to take her out. He then followed after them. Dalku wondered what to do in each step. Horim hoped all the lights were green along the way, because her life had always been untoward. So hopefully her life can be more favorable in the future. Ji-young and her daughter took a bus. Strangely, the routes weren't stuck in a traffic jam as usual. Dalku and Horim bought clothes for Ji-young. Though he was her husband, he knew little about her hobbies. She had never bought clothes before. She was so unkempt at home. Dalku wanted to push Horim to hell. So he decided to buy everything at the store. He asked the store to hang a sign of 90% discount, to make sure that Ji-young could afford anything there when she came. Indeed, Ji-young tried on some outfits when seeing the sign of 90% discount. Horim was pretty sure that she wouldn't buy anything. She was very careful in money spending. She was still a woman though. Horim was speechless with Abdullah's words. He even forgot that his wife was once a girl who loved beauty. Dalku wanted to give her a fancy bouquet, which would make her proud. Dalku nervously waited for Ji-young's reaction. Yet, Horim came first to angle for her heart. Their daughter urged them to hang out together. Horim hugged Ji-young tight and sincerely apologized to her. Dalku felt annoyed whenever seeing him. Ji-young took Horim's bouquet. Ji-young still tried to approach Dalku. Dalku didn't reject her. Abdullah kindly reminded Dalku. She was no longer your daughter. During dinner, Ji-young was surprised many times. The waitress offered them sweet dessert for free. Ji-young couldn't wait to try it. Horim asked if she liked it. Ji-young said all women loved it. Horim felt something missing. Even Ji-young forgot that she loved sweet food. He suddenly felt sorry for her. Later, he reported the situation to Dalku. Ji-young thought he was still contacting Ji-young. The more he explained, the more it went wrong. Ji-young lost her belief in him. She gave him a kick then left. Her kick made Dalku happy and he then hugged Ji-young. They prepared for the next step. Is there any woman who is not attracted by a successful man? When Ji-young was trying to decide whether she should remain married or not, lots of precious items, such as golden decorations, were sent to her home, plus a luxury car. Her neighbors gathered around to admire those. Her mother-in-law and sister-in-law were stunned. The yard was covered with pricey items and a luxury car. When Dalu introduced himself as her father, she gave him a punch and Horim took her blow instead. Why did the father of her husband's mistress address himself as her father? Ji-young couldn't accept it yet. Horim made an excuse to get away from such a situation. However, Dalu didn't let him go. Horim had no choice but sit down. Ji-young asked why he suddenly appeared after 35 years. She supposed that he was in need of her heart or liver. Ji-young shouted to shut their mouths and saw Dalu off her home. She also kicked Horim out of home. As soon as Dalu walked out, Horim's mother and sister came to greet him. As bold as brass, they turned to butter him up. Dalu lied to them that they were beautiful and kind. Even he himself felt sick of it. Horim's mother encouraged Horim to go out with his father-in-law. Standing outside, Horim heard Dalu's plan to take Ji-young to Saudi Arabia. Dalu found his daughter to help him protect his asset. He would take her there by every means or else he would lose his asset. Learning the truth, Horim confronted Dalu. He knew how long she had waited for her father. For years, she sat on a trunk waiting for him. Dalu pretended to be cold, driving Horim nuts. His current success was built from Ji-young's miserable childhood. Her mother's death turned her into an orphan. Even now having to meet a scumbag like him goes through an extremely miserable life. Dalu didn't want to hear it but Horim kept questioning. Will you live with her if you bring her there? Dalu didn't deny Horim's presumption that Dalu would just give Ji-young a sum of money and then throw her away again. Dalu was confident to give her everything she wanted. He told Horim, "You're just a cheating husband who agreed for money. You're unqualified to judge me. When you pretended to be someone's husband because her father is rich, they kept saying evil things about each other." Adbala spoke up. "Neither of you are qualified to take responsibility. You both abandoned your family for money." Abdullah's words shut their mouths, but what he said seemed right. Horim said to Abdullah's face, "Do you want to take responsibility?" "No need. I'll stay by her side and undo my mistakes." Horim promised not to hurt her again and turned away. Dalu was astounded by that. At this time, he couldn't stand on his own feet. He wondered where his walking stick was. Horim felt so sorry for his wife. His eyes turned red with tears. Ji-young stayed up all night. She had a look at the photos and letters that her and her mother sent away. It was like yesterday when they depended on each other. Each stamp was carefully attached with their love for Dalu. What a pity that her mother had left forever. As Ji-young's rich father appeared, Ji-young's sister-in-law changed her attitude and treated Ji-young well. She insisted on helping Ji-young to throw the garbage. Then her mother-in-law also came. They asked her what Dalu was doing for a living. Ji-young turned away and left without answering them. Her mother-in-law called after her, "Mind how you go. I'll cook dinner." Abdullah came for a talk. He said it was true that Dalu had an enormous fortune. Thereby, there were many people who wanted to take it from him, and she was someone whom Dalu had to protect. No matter what Abdullah said, Ji-young couldn't make a decision. Dalu ordered bodyguards to closely follow Ji-young. And that made Ji-young angry. Dalu called to ask Ji-young to bring him the walking stick which he left at her home. The more he said how he needed it, the more Ji-young wanted to make difficulties for him. Then they had words during the call. Dalu said, "You're a trunk on the side road." Ji-young pissed him off and they agreed to meet at a cafe. Dalu was stunned when Ji-young looked so like her mother. Time passed so quickly. Back then, Dalu and her mother were combustible youngsters. He mistook Ji-young with her mother. Dalu was so confused. Ji-young's mother-in-law and sister-in-law were happy with the luxury bags and clothes. She told her mother-in-law, "Consider them my dowry. Please don't make difficulties for me from now on." Ji-young then went straight to her room. Horim reproached her for receiving a big sum of money from Dalu. He wondered if she had no self-esteem. She replied that her self-esteem was ruined by her mother-in-law for the last 10 years. She no longer had it. Horim didn't know what to say. The man in black outside was ready to act. Horim told stories to lull her daughter to sleep. Ji-young tied himself in knots when hearing the talk between her husband and daughter. In the early 80s, countries were almost crazy about oil exploitation. Dalu risked his life to work in Saudi Arabia. Under the harsh hot sun, Dalu seemed to be swallowed by the desert. No great loss without small gain. He found the course of oil. After that, his life reached its peak. Even all of Saudi Arabia respected him. 35 years later, Dalu returned to South Korea to find his lost daughter. But everything happened beyond his expectations. His son-in-law's mistress were trying to approach him and change her life. Dalu's attitude towards Ji-young wasn't certain. The next day, Ji-young folded up and apologized to Ji-young. She hoped Ji-young would forgive her. Ji-young met Horim before talking to Ji-young. She asked Horim to persuade Ji-young to work as a script writer for CJ. She complimented on Ji-young's talent. CJ is the leading entertainment company in the country, a dream company of many people. Horim tried to talk to Ji-young. Ji-young said she received an offer from CJ's director long ago. Both of them knew it was related to Ji-young. Horim was honest that he met Ji-young earlier. What he cared most about was Ji-young's thoughts. He agreed to do all the housework to buy Ji-young time to pursue her dream. Abdullah stood outside, closely observing the inside. He turned back and saw a man in black spying on them. Dalu's time in Korea was running out. Ji-young promised to help Dalu's daughter fulfill her dream if he bought CJ Entertainment. Dalu invested money in CJ to optimize and broaden the company. He vowed to create a Hollywood in Korea, which excited the company's employees and shareholders. Ji-young didn't know what to do. Her father already became her boss. Ji-young wanted to cancel the contract. Unfortunately, she could not pay the huge amount of contract compensation, so she intended to sell the apartment and bookstore, which Dalu bought for her, to pay for the contract compensation. However, he didn't buy them in her name. So that she left in anger, he decided to announce her identity in the next few days. Still, she didn't want to address him as her father. Dalu's warlike temper was Dalu's weaknesses. He immediately said that only she could protect his fortune. Ji-young was stunned for a long while. Only Abdullah knew that was not what Dalu meant. Somehow, they kept hurting each other. Ji-young burst into tears in pain. Dalu could not calm down on the way home. He ordered Abdullah to escort her home safely. As soon as Dalu arrived at the parking lot, an Arabian assassin tried to take his life. Dalu scared them with his fighting skill to seek information. He could knock all of them off with his walking stick. Abdullah promptly came over when Dalu knelt down because of his dizziness. He fell to the ground when Abdullah reported about Ji-young. Ji-young cried out loud when having a look at her mother's photos. She imagined that her mother was telling her to let go of her worries. Even though she tried her best to reject, she couldn't be indifferent with him, which made her extremely sad. Ji-young's care for Dalu, but she couldn't hide her bad ambition. Dalu didn't give her an answer. Ji-young was doing chore, which made her feel better, yet, her mother-in-law didn't let her do it. She asked Ji-young to rest on the sofa. Ji-young's sister-in-law came in early morning and asked her to write a script. Horim visited Dalu without telling Ji-young. It was hateful when he spoke up. That Dalu's enemies were everywhere. "Are you here to annoy me?" Horim said it was a father's love. Feeling ashamed, Dalu ran after Horim to beat him up. As soon as Ji-young came, Dalu pretended to black out. Ji-young whammed Dalu to wake him up. When Ji-young almost called an ambulance, Horim said he was kidding. Dalu gave Horim a kick. After Ji-young checked him out, Dalu was taken to his bed. Both Dalu and Horim cared more about Ji-young. Dalu wished she would feed him, but Ji-young only gave him the chopsticks. Dalu held the chopsticks with a shaky hand. Ignoring uncomfortable Horim, Dalu kept pretending. Horim fed him instead. Dalu tried to keep calm when Horim fed him. He tried hard not to let Ji-young figure it out. It was the first time Ji-young took good care of him. And Dalu said sorry to her. Still, Ji-young decided not to go to Saudi Arabia, because she didn't want to help him. At his old age, Dalu didn't have enough strength to threaten her, besides those who had their eyes on Dalu's fortune. There was Miwa, who tried her strength against NIS. In fact, Detective Han knew all the moves of Miwa. Ji-young took Dalu to the hospital as his guardian. Like father, like daughter, they cared for each other. Someway, his walking stick became their conversation's topic. As for him, it was a friend who stayed by his side during dangerous circumstances. The desert was full of poisonous insects such as scorpions and venomous snakes. It was even scarier if there are no water and food or being lost. In such a situation, the walking stick kept him stand up. After 35 years of distance, they were talking like father and daughter. Dalu tried to make his daughter laugh. In the CT scan room, Dalu recalled the encounters with Ji-young. Feeling insecure about her married life, Dalu rushed into the bank and took Ho-jim out. He decided to give Horim a big gift. Horim would become the branch manager as long as he divorced Ji-young. Dalu promised about a bright future which Horim had to try hard to get in the next 30 years. He no longer wanted this jerk to be his son-in-law. Because Dalu's honor was injured. And it wasn't Ji-young's thoughts. That was a compensation for their divorce. Dalu tried another way with Ji-young. As long as she appeared as his daughter at the press conference when he purchased CJ, he would disappear from her life. Thinking for a while, Ji-young agreed. Everything wasn't peaceful as it seemed. Miwa asked Ji-young to lure the bodyguards away during the press conference. Otherwise, she would take back 3 billion won. The press conference took place as scheduled. Dalu was scheming for something big. It was the first time he announced his identity in South Korea, which stirred the equities market. This risky move was still better than losing his fortune. Horim tried to reduce Ji-young's stress. Ji-young asked Horim out for a talk. Dalu told the media about the one he loved, who passed away before they could stay together. At least, she gave Dalu a daughter. Ji-young's heart seemed to jump out. Suddenly a man appeared and asked Ji-young out. As Ji-young didn't show herself, Dalu came inside to check it out. Believing that her plan succeeded, Miwa left in content. The detective lost track of Miwa. Through CCTV, he saw the man kidnapping Ji-young. Dalu lost his temper when Horim didn't keep his eyes on Ji-young. He then commanded Abdullah to find for NIS's help. Horim couldn't do anything to help. Miwa untied Ji-young. Miwa only needed Ji-young to stay there for 3 days. She also admitted that she was the schemer. Ji-young knew she needed to handle Miwa. Miwa begged her, "I'm wrong. Please forgive me." Ji-young grabbed Miwa's hair and slapped her. They were insane. After saving Ji-young, Dalu told Horim to consider his offer. Dalu couldn't his sympathy for his daughter's situation. He had no choice to suppress it. Ji-young came home with her fear. However, she could forgive Horim. His warmth calmed her down. She fell asleep in his arm. Horim didn't want these things happen again. As he wasn't able to protect Ji-young, Horim finally accepted the offer. Dalu wondered if he was really unconfident or interested in his gift. Which one would be Horim's choice? Horim asked Ji-young for a divorce. Ji-young didn't expect that he had acted in cold blood. If Ji-young lived with Dalu, they could let their daughter learn ballet and give her a better life. It was better than living with useless Horim who couldn't afford a princess dress for her. More than that, Ji-young no longer needed to work hard for a living. From then on, she could do anything she wanted. I'm grateful to her. It was the first time Horim demeaned himself before her. Ji-young shed tears and recalled the hardest time of her life. Marriage is the only opportunity for a woman to choose her companion for life. If you choose the wrong one, your life will be stuck. While the right one would give you a beautiful life and help you glow up, the wrong one would blow out all the light in your life. Women must always be of sound mind. Shi Young confirmed whether he was abandoning his wife and daughter. Horim wished them a better life. Dalu heard them from afar. Shi Young asked, "Why do you think my father, who was gone for 35 years, better than you?" Shi Young indeed wanted money, but Horim was her family. Family members cannot be separated from each other. Shi Young just wanted him to stay with her. He still had something else to say. "I quit my job, let's just get a divorce." Dalu was touched seeing them together. Dalu's asset in Saudi Arabia was seized. And he became a poor man. He lost everything after just a night. So he leaned on Ji Young's help. This astounded Ji Young. She told him not to let her mother-in-law know about that. When her mother-in-law came, Dalu wanted to settle an old score with her. The total sum of her spending were 2 billion won, nearly $5 million. Dalu demanded 2 billion in return. He asked if she kept it for herself. On behalf of her daughter, he asked for justice to be done. When Ji Young got married, she gave her no wedding or jewelries. Of course, no betrothal gifts. Ji Young's mother-in-law stammered. She tried to defend herself. Dalu criticized her for being harsh on his daughter. "Stay away from Ji Young as I'll live here from now on." Horim felt relieved when his resignation wasn't approved. He tore the letter and got back to work. He was startled when Dalu was at his home. Not over yet. His heart skipped a beat when Abdullah walked out of the bathroom. He was shocked when learning that Dalu lost his fortune. So he wanted to stay with them. Dalu reminded him that he had nothing left, warning him not to try to take anything from him. Without mentioning that Dalu had forced Horim to divorce Ji Young, Abdullah became a helpful cook helper of Ji Young. That was the first time Dalu had a meal with his daughter, which made him feel blissful. Ji Young gave her daughter a shrimp. Dalu did the same to Ji Young. Horim said Ji Young was allergic to shrimps. However, she still ate it as it referred to fatherliness. They both felt the other's affection. Though she felt itchy over the body, she was still happy with that. Looking herself in the mirror, Ji Young hated herself. She remembered her mother, who just passed away. When she did something wrong for money, Ji Young took Dalu to the memorial park. She burst out crying, blaming her mother for leaving the world on that day. This woman only thought for herself. Her mother wrote, "I miss Ji Young" on every page. She was also sorry for her daughter. Don't try to change someone's heart. Try to protect them from harm. Don't waste your life on someone who is not worth it. The Saudi Arabian princess came to see Dalu in person to tell him that the minister wanted to bathe his hands in political affairs. He hired foreigners to harm Dalu's daughter. Also, he encouraged all members of the National Assembly to vote for the approval, confiscate Dalu's oil fields and assets. Dalu was the only hope of the king. Dalu also expressed his gratitude for the country where he was granted with glory. He could give up his property and dignity or even his life. However, the princess only wanted the man she loved to be safe and happy. Dalu said something to reassure her. He told her to sincerely pray between an inch of her life, and God would give her another chance to live. Dalu's bankruptcy was on the news. The mother-in-law and sister-in-law changed their attitude. Dalu tried to help Ji Young take a load off her mind, while Ji Young cared for his head injury. Dalu got his head injured when he was young, yet he couldn't afford the treatment. What a miracle! He found the oil field at that point in time. Ji Young wondered if Dalu married another woman, and whether did she have step-siblings. He said no and looked at Ji Young. It seemed that the woman he loves was sitting between him and his daughter. They wished this beautiful moment would last forever. These two men kept prowling around Ji Young. She couldn't focus on writing. They read her script and asked her so many questions. Ji Young pissed off. "You guys are so annoying. Get out." "Okay, I'll go." Ji Young confided in her best friend that her rich father went bankrupt. She thought she finally had a voice in her husband's family. But there came another problem. The orphanage manager was all ears to Ji-young, giving her a tender smile. Even Ji-young didn't realize that she talked about Dalu for 2 hours. She seemed to complain about him, yet she actually cared for him. Fate wasn't easy on them. Dalu would leave her home in the next few days to hide his disease from her. He said he was good when she asked about his state. But Ji-young still felt insecure. She came to see the doctor as Dalu's daughter and learned that Dalu got Alzheimer's. His head injury and stress were the cause. So what should they do? Fate was kidding Ji-young. It was very difficult to see my father again, but I expected the reunion to be short. She found her father after all those years, but they didn't have much time left. She didn't care about how rich or handsome he was. She only wanted him to be alive, but it became something too far away. Ji-young was full of pity for Dalu, who suffered it alone. She no longer felt hate for him. Dalu stood still at Ji-young's desk. He tried to remember everything because he was afraid of forgetting about Ji-young. At night, Ji-young gave him a gift. It wasn't a high-end item. Simply, it was something she always wanted to give her father. Everyone bought underwear for their parents with their first salary, which was her dream so far. Ji-young bought Dalu underwear with her first payment as a script writer. Dalu picked up a red one and said, "I like this. Thank you very much, daughter." Ji-young held back her tears and quickly left. Dalu made her laugh with his mischief. At this moment, their love for each other grew. Closing the door, Ji-young burst out crying. Horim felt so sad when she cried. Couldn't sleep at night. Dalu admired the moonlight through the window. He never felt happy like that before. A rich old man who had Alzheimer's. His only concern was Ji-young's marriage. Dalu woke up Horim in the middle of the night to ask how he met and got married to Ji-young. Horim didn't get it. He kept drinking. Dalu didn't stop him. He coldly looked at Horim until he said sorry. Dalu got Horim drunk to make him put it bluntly. Horim honestly said that Ji-young was the one who was always by his side. As taking it for granted, he forgot how precious she was, and he never knew how hard it was for her in their marital life. He said, "I'll quit my job and make her happy." Horim promised to do everything for her, and asked Dalu for another chance. Dalu used the same way to win Ji-young's heart. Dalu used a simple way to make Horim put it bluntly. Horim emphasized that he was sincere. "I say well, do well." Horim passed the test. Yet, he had to pass other physical tests. It was a torture for a weak man like Horim. Horim couldn't breathe after exercises. Dalu didn't let him rest for a while. Horim was extremely embarrassed when he went to work. Even though he was exhausted, he still tried to do his job. Dalu came to see Ji-young B. He said she was as strong as he when he was younger. She risked her life to go ahead without looking back. She accidentally hurt someone on the way. Dalu gave her another chance. Ji-young B, who always fought alone, felt great admiration for Dalu. She knew Dalu realized that she wasn't his daughter from the beginning, because he couldn't have feelings between a man and a woman for his daughter. Ji-young B couldn't take her eyes off the man who treated her well and lenient, no matter how he felt about her. She only wanted to stay with him and be recognized. Ji-young B sincerely apologized for pushing Ji-young in danger. Dalu told her he had lost everything. As a man of his word, he gave her a name card of the one who would give her wings. Dalu wished she would be successful, yet she wanted to take care of him. Ji-young B had deep feelings for him. He admitted that he had a disease, so he might not realize her next time. Ji-young had known about his disease. Ji-young took over Dalu's savings. She would give Dalu and Abdullah 130,000 won each month. Ji-young told her daughter to do math with the help of Dalu. If he got a wrong answer, Unbai was allowed to give a flip on his head. Dalu knew she was putting him in discipline. When Ji-young called him dad, Dalu asked her to call him dad again, yet Abdullah was worried as they had no money left. Meanwhile, Dalu felt as enthusiastic as a child. He was happy to receive pocket money every month. Ji-young asked if they need to be paid in percentage. Abdullah suddenly became a hard-working professional family nanny. Dalu didn't seriously clean the toilet. When he walked out, Ji-young forced him to do it seriously. He had no choice but try to turn it into a 5-star toilet. He then cleaned every corner in the toilet. But the result shocked Ji-young. Dalu even asked for a payment. Afterwards, Dalu came to the traditional sauna for the first time. He laughed when Abdullah wore a towel on his head. But then he also put it on the head. They took a selfie and posted it. Horim felt like it was a dream, whereas Ji-young was creating beautiful memories. Ji-young dragged Dalu to the sauna room. A while later, the minister was caught and Dalu could get back all his assets. Ji-young liked him when he had no money, so he donated it all to the society. He thought she would like what he did, but he forgot that she was close-fisted. When Ji-young heard it, she screamed, "Are you crazy? Why did you do that?" Ji-young boiled with indignation. Abdullah reprimanded him for not discussing with his family. Horim thought his mental health got worse. Dalu denied it. Ji-young screamed to shut them up. Dalu didn't know what was wrong with that. Ji-young said people admired her wealth. Horim said she was too blunt. She was like, "You know I'm vulgar." Ji-young wondered why he didn't give Eunbi his money. Dalu said it didn't mean he would be poor. Ji-young still felt uncomfortable. When Dalu didn't ask for her opinion, Ji-young then kicked Dalu and Abdullah out of her home. Though getting back to his rich life, Dalu didn't feel used to it. Feeling empty, Dalu told Abdullah to clear off half of the chairs. Even so, he still felt uncomfortable. Then he had meals with the house helpers, yet he didn't have any appetite. Jae-young still cooked breakfast for 5 people. Dalu felt relieved when Dalu left his home. Ji-young said she had been suffering his mother for 15 years. She didn't allow Horim to talk about her father like that. Horim was profuse in his apologies. Ji-young learned about Dalu's disease on the internet. Dalu felt so frustrated waiting for Ji-young's calls. Finally, she called him and he pretended to be fine. As soon as she asked about his disease, he told her to come and check it out. Before she could answer, he said he could come to her home. Ji-young told him to keep practicing and go back to the doctor a week later. Poor Dalu. He was rejected. The next day, Dalu kept texting Ji-young. He made up many reasons, which sounded very ridiculous. However, Ji-young just replied him with a yes. Eventually, she could experience a parent's blabber after 35 years of waiting. She said he was annoying, but in fact, her eyes were full of happiness. Dalu followed Ji-young to the store of traditional medicines to say hello. Dalu bragged about his achievements these past few days. Below the comments section, many people asked for his money. Everyone wanted to have a rich father-in-law like him. "Are you smearing my husband?" Ji-young wondered. On the date of a follow-up appointment, Ji-young said she wouldn't let anyone else change his diapers. To protect his honor, he wouldn't bother her with that. After that, he would leave forever. Ji-young said she wouldn't let him go. God bless them. Dalu didn't have Alzheimer. A happy life was waiting ahead of Ji-young. Dalu had to stay in America for a year to do a project of CJ's improvement there. He wanted to take her there to improve herself and fulfill her dream. Horim totally supported her, promised that he would try hard to take care of their daughter. Surprisingly, Dalu appointed Horim to be the project manager abroad. A chance for him to prove himself. However, he refused the offer as he wanted to prove himself without any help. Dalu changed his thought about Horim. Love and hate. A year later, Ji-young sent the orphanage manager postcards. she would return soon, yet, she hoped the manager would realize her change. Each photo captured each of her memory. A 36-year-old woman who escaped the shackles of her family. She changed her life with her talent. She young of the present gave off the beauty of consciousness. Her confidence and generosity transmitted a positive energy. The leading TV station interviewed her as a late bloomer. Horim worked hard and got a breakthrough, which helped him take over a high position in his company. Though they were living far from each other, they each strove for a better life. In the interview, Ji-young thanked for Horim's support. Horim took care of his daughter with all the love. One day, Horim put on a nice suit for an important appointment. His colleagues thought he had another affair. Only the manager encouraged him. He came to pick up Eun-bai at school. Two mothers were talking behind Ji-young's back. They said she was a heartless and hot-tempered mother who left her child with her husband, that she became a famous writer thanks to her rich father. Couldn't stand what they said. Horim confronted them. Mothers gave birth to their children. Can't their fathers pick them up after school? Your husbands aren't willing to do it doesn't mean others' husbands are the same. Do you guys know my wife? Have you ever talked to her? Don't talk like you know her well. On the way home, Ji-young struck a conversation. But Horim didn't reply to her. He just smiled. Couldn't take it anymore. She was mad at him when he didn't wish her a happy birthday. He even showed a cold face along the way. Turns out Horim prepared a surprise for her. Yet, they didn't get it done yet. What a shame, which made everyone confused. Dalu grew cross at Horim. Horim no longer pretended to be cold. He missed her so badly. A boy suddenly appeared and called Dalu dad. He wondered who the boy was. Everyone there was surprised. The boy said he was son of the Turkish girl whom Dalu met 12 years ago. Dalu explained to Ji-young. I just said I remained unmarried, which didn't mean I didn't have another kid. To celebrate the successful journey to find his children, Dalu took everyone to Saudi Arabia in his own plane. Due to a storm, the plane crashed into the sea. They drifted on a desert island. They got scared of a howl. This is the end of the movie. Please subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you again in the next movie.